Jupiter was conjunct the fixed star Delphinus, or the constellation Delphinus. Now, Delphinus is not on the ecliptic, but it still can influence the Earth. All of the planets and constellations and all of the star systems, believe it or not, affect us all in this present moment. There are some energies that go against you. Let's just look at it in the form of like noxious gas, right? It needs being energies. And then let's look at it as like carbon dioxide. And if a noxious gas get in contact with a carbon dioxide, the carbon dioxide will defeat that noxious gas, or the noxious gas will win, and now the environment will become toxic. And this toxic energy will make it hard for you to live, hard for you to breathe. But the ancient mind viewed certain energies such as gases and electromagnetism as entities, as sorceries and spells and witchcrafts, and there's these wars and these understandings and cosmologies. And what I'm saying is, sometimes people will go to war with each other in the ancient mind, and the people from the outside looking in like, why is they even going through this, right? What is it? But we don't never understand that esoterically in the cosmos is a war being played out. It's a suppression that's being taken place. And when you talk about suppression, the truth is at the seventh story, right? What tends to happen with the people, especially the people in America, the black people in America, the melanated people in America, the African Americans in America, they get chopped down at the first floor. So when we begin to smell the truth, we can't even begin to smell the truth or taste the truth or even understand the truth, because soon as we do something basic like build generational wealth, we put a target on our back. And the reason why is because we represent something that's beyond wealth. So a simple understanding of our spiritual energy, it easily brings us to a point of wealth, success, magnetism. Why? Because everyone is a healer. But sometimes we imagine that the things that we have externally are the justifications for our inner healing abundance. So my job, my goal, my gift is that I see your abundance right now in this moment, whether you see it or not. And the most important thing for you to do is to tune into your abundance, as opposed to looking for justifiers and qualifiers and things outside of you that will make you feel as if you're connected to your soul, when the fact is that feeling is not going to come from the outside in, it's going to come from the inside out. So what we're talking about is the deep understanding. Last week I said Jupiter is coming with a sword, but that sword is double. A sword has two sides to it, right? Double-edged sword, double-edged blade, something to that effect, right? It'll cut on one side and it'll cut on the other side. One side is that life has to be taken for us to wake up. The other side is that when that life is taken, that energy is able to connect with this cosmology and open up a different understanding, a wider understanding. So sacrifice sucks because somebody dies. But in ancient times, sacrifice is normal because it opens up a connection cosmologically and astrologically. Why is this so? Because no one ever really dies. Why? Because energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transferred. And so when people read these types of things, say the law of thermodynamics, which states the third law, which states that energy cannot be destroyed nor created. Once again, I might be all caps, so let's just look this up. Law of thermodynamics, third law. The third law of thermodynamics states as follows regarding the properties of closed system of thermodynamic equilibrium. The entropy of a system approaches a constant value as its temperature approaches absolute zero. The constant value is called the residual entropy of a system. So please speak English to me, somebody, right? Somebody talk to me. Okay, not the third law, the first law. And it's the first law. I thought it was the third, it was the first. I stand corrected. The first law of thermodynamics, also known as the law of the conservation of energy, states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. Energy can only be transferred or changed from one form to another. Let's make sure you guys can see that before we start crying all the time when somebody transitions. And trust me, death is sad. I'll be the first one to say death isn't sad. But I also have to understand within myself, as I do study, if I, start to learn knowledge of self and deal with my own life, it's basically laid out that this is a law that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only can be transferred or changed from one form to another. So let's talk. Turning on a light would seem to produce energy. However, it is electrical energy that is converted. So that electrical energy is what is called in the potential phase of its development. In our potential phase would be our star body, our kinetic phase of electrical energy, which would be our 0 to some 90, 100 years of life. Where we have kinetic energy, we have the Mars aspect of our lives, and this is what's coming online. The Martian aspect of our life, where we are connected to source, but we are also in this body. This is an amazing event that is taking place called your life. How do you spend it, right? How do you understand it? My thing is, it's time to get deep. It's time to channel our Atlantean truth. Now, if you are in a different country and you never been to America, you don't got family in America, you're not rooted in America, then you might not understand. See, they tried to tell us that our roots of the modern melanated man and woman, our roots were in Africa, and they gave us scientific tests and understandings. Now, when we do other scientific tests, because let's talk about science. Science is not a truth. Science is an investigation. And once you come up with an investigation, you might have a hypothesis, you might have a law, you might have an understanding. But if I come up with something different, then that science has moved away. The same thing as the Clovis Indians, right? Y'all ever heard of the Clovis Indians? And this was the normal shit, right? This is what people thought. Clovis culture. The Clovis culture, right? And this is all made up, right? But this was a law. Clovis culture is a prehistoric Palo-American culture named for its distinct tools found in Mexico. Bloom, bloom, bloom. Clovis first. Known as Clovis first, the predominant hypothesis. Y'all see that? Hypothesis, not the predominant truth, right? So whoever decided that Clovis was the first people in America came up through a hypothesis, meaning that they didn't contact every person in America and ask them their history, y'all. Let's be clear, right? They told people what it was through this thing called science. But when you understand the terminology or the sciences of it, they gonna tell you that we don't really know what we saying, we hypothesizing about it. right, among archaeologists in the later half of the 20th century had been the people associated with the Clovis culture were the first inhabitants of America. So we went to school. You got people who got PhDs, right? Master's degrees. Would bear witness to the lie that the Clovis culture was the first inhabitants of America and they would be Atlanteans. But they wouldn't recognize themselves as Atlanteans. They would recognize themselves as African Americans, because the same people who told you that the Clovis people was the first people in America also told you that they sent you over here on ships. See how that worked? But see how I'm gonna tell you how it works more. The hypothesis came to be challenged. Ashe, because our ancestors way stronger than a person coming through with a predominant hypothesis. We must challenge what we think we know in order to bring about our healing, bring about our deep understanding of life and life as it stands. In the first part of this, I know they paying you good money. I know they giving you a nice little check every 2 weeks. But if you stand on a lie, you stand on a lie. Your inner world is going to reflect that lie that you stand on. And the main lie that they try to tell melanated people is that they are in fact African Americans. As long, I promise you, they will give you the biggest fucking check in the world. They'll give you the nicest mansion. You cannot say that we always were here. You can never say that we were always here, could you? They will laugh you out the building. You're crazy. The hypothesis came to be challenged by studies suggesting a pre-Clovis human occupation of the Americas. In 2011, following the excavation of an occupation site at Buttermilk Creek, Texas, a prominent group of scientists claimed to have definitely established the existence of an occupation older than Clovis. So, back to this. We're going to explain this, but y'all gonna have to give me a minute. Gonna have to give me a minute to explain this. Y'all all right? And let me say thank you to Lady D Supreme Freight for the super chat. November Mage, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate y'all love and support and donations. Thank you. In astrology, Delphinius is like Saturn and Mars. So our restrictive nature and our active nature, meaning that this nature of this energy, if you have a planet conjunct it or energy surrounding it, you have to be mindful. And this is a theme throughout the astrology. These stars, these fixed stars, do not play. And you have to be active on how you order your life. You can look at life externally and manifest a lot externally, but it won't generate the joy of the soul within. Right? It'll only get you but so far. And because of this, I want to say negative things tend to happen, but I don't want to say that, but it just generally seems to happen. And so the soul can be rather ruthless if you don't pay attention to it. Most men can understand the ruthlessness of the soul when you don't tune into it, because you dealing with bullshit for real. I know some women deal with it too, but 10 times out of 10, you don't really have to tune in and tap into your soul all the time, especially if you look halfway decent. Especially if you can manipulate a system or got money, so you tend to use money, good looks to kind of sidestep the system a little bit, right? We all do it because we don't understand the power of the soul. Okay? So since we don't understand the nature of Saturn, which is order, Mars is so fucked up sometimes because there's so much centered in our personal decisions. And just think about your personal decisions when you was 18. Now think about your personal decisions when you was 30. 10 times out of 10 when you 50 and you look back on the decisions you made when you was 30, you're going to be looking like, what the fuck was I thinking about? What was truly wrong with me? This is the nature of Mars. The nature of Mars is saying whatever I do is the right thing to do. And if you don't agree with it, if something happens wrong, something is wrong with you. You know, some people might listen to my content and something bad happens to them. They might view it because they was listening to my podcast. Right? In reference to the information not being nothing about me, but really trying to understand developing a deep relationship with your soul. And not only a deep relationship with your soul, but then listening to what your soul tells you to do and then acting on that. Because you can have a very high energy of your soul. Never listen to it. And since your soul knows that energy never dies and you can come back in another body, your soul will take you out. Just because you don't get it and you don't understand. And I don't know who knows or doesn't know. But sometimes you have to stop for a second and really, really, really stop giving a fuck about what you got and what you don't got. For a second. Because when we start talking about Atlantis, y'all not going to understand the implications of Atlantis because you're too busy in the Matrix. You're too busy getting the money, getting the coin, and the whole time the ancestors is trying to talk to you. The whole time the answers is telling you that the material world is not going to solve your problems. Helping people get money is not going to solve your problems. Making money is not going to solve your problems. What we're attempting to show people with Saturn and Capricorn is how to connect with your higher self as if it is a skill that you don't understand. And I use that word in verbiage because sometimes people imagine that this is something that either doesn't apply to them or they can't do it or just don't matter because they are. Let's show you. I can show you better than I can tell you. Because people think that they are just simply this era. Your life, your personal decisions, your life, your personal decisions, your life, your personal decisions. But in fact, you have this whole circle that you can tune in and tap in, which represents the source of all creation. Which once you figure that part out, then that leads to your direction. But most people completely forego the source of all creation. Either they don't believe they have access to it, or they just don't give a fuck. It just depends. So we got two distinct energies that's dealing with sacrifice. You have Young Dolph, you have Chadwick Boseman, and they're all speaking to a specific energy of Atlantis. And let me try to. So you have Delphin and Poseidon. Delphin was a dolphin-shaped sea daemon in the service of the god Poseidon. Okay? Let me just do this. Atlas and Poseidon. In Greek mythology, Atlas is a titan condemned to hold up the heavens or sky for eternity after the Titanomachy. Atlas also plays a role in the myths of two of the greatest heroes, blue, bloom, blah, blah. That's not what I'm trying to get to. Poseidon. Anyway, the Atlantic Ocean is derived from the Sea of Atlas. The name Atlantis, mentioned in Plato's Timaeus dialogue, derives from Atlantis Nissos, literally meaning Atlas's island. So the king of Atlantis is named Atlas. Trying to find the facts of he being the son of Poseidon, but maybe they won't tell me. Maybe I'm making it all up. King of Atlantis. According to Plato, the first king of Atlantis was also called Atlas, but that Atlas was a son of Poseidon and mortal woman Cleito. Boom. You could also look at Atlas as being the king of Mauritania, which would be the king of the Moors, and okay collection of maps to be called an atlas. So even a book of maps is called the Atlas, devoted to the book to the king of Mauritania. But another part, Atlas became associated with Northwest Africa over time. Now, you look at a map, understand that the whole world is Africa, because Africa don't mean that country or that continent. Africa means land. All historians agree that it was the Roman use of the term Africa for parts of Tunisia and northern Algeria, which ultimately, almost 2,000 years later, gave the continent its name. Some believe that Africa is a contraction of Africa Terra, meaning the land of Afri. Now, if I didn't even know that constellation was existed, or people might have called the land Afri or something to that effect, but let's look at a map of the world. Let's look at an atlas of the world. And the whole world is Africa, right? But then you'd start talking about the northwest of Africa. What would be the northwest of Africa? This area would be the northwest of Africa, which would be United States, Canada, Mexico, Central America, and Alaska. This is the northwest of Africa because the Pangea, which was one thing, right, and then split away, you can look at the goddamn map and see that this was all one landmass, and then it kind of broke away and spread apart, which would be tied into Atlantis and things of that nature. But give me a second. So you got Young Dolph, sacrifice, his name Young Dolphin. When people transition, we give them cosmologies, we put them in the stars, we begin to understand them as a star frequency. But the energy of Delphin or the dolphin relates to the king of Poseidon, which relates to Titans and Atlas. Atlas being the king of Atlantis, but wait, there's more. Black Panther Wakanda Forever will be introducing a highly anticipated new location into the MCU with Atlantis. Fans have been eagerly awaiting one of the comic's first anti-heroes to join the MCU, with Namor, the Submariner. With his complex character will come the introduction of his underwater kingdom. But what will Black Panther Wakanda Forever be basing Atlantis on? Now, understand that this is some shit that I'm gonna just kind of freeball and freestyle on, so y'all just gonna have to trust me or don't. So these movies, Black Panther 1, Black Panther 2, are taking place in Atlanta. Okay? They shoot these movies in Atlanta for the most part. I'm sure they shoot all over the world, but one of their main centers and stages is in Atlanta. Maybe Tyler Perry Studios or whatever, right? Atlantis, right? That's one level. Now, this weekend, as you know, Drake, father from Memphis, but Drake live in Canada. Drake is assigned to the Draco constellation, or that energy. Now, Dolphin, of course, is tied into the Atlanteans and the original Atlantis people. The thing about Young Dolph is that he got 80% off of his music when most artists got 1 to 2%. So Young Dolph stunted differently. He had all types of cars, all types of money, all types of property, put all of his people on. He had one of the hottest artists in Memphis working on his record label, and they was all independent for the most part, which is kind of telling you that they different from everybody else. If the whole industry, all the people that you know is signed to record labels, you talking about Future, Drake signed to Epic and things of that nature, and Young Dolph, which ties to Drake because that's where Drake's father from, right? Young Dolph is an anomaly in all of hip hop. There is nobody like Young Dolph except possibly Rick Ross, but even Rick Ross was signed to Def Jam, or is signed to Def Jam, or some likes of it. So with this being said, he had to be taken out, because if everybody in the game is making 10% off their albums or less, 10% or less, and then you have another person making 80% or more off their albums, he can't exist. So what tend to happen is that he got took out, but then that whole weekend in Atlanta, everybody was celebrating Future's birthday with the help of Drake. So I'm not saying that, birthday party, celebration, these two things don't have nothing to do with each other. But at the same time, if you see things from how I see it, you can see that they take out anybody that's independent, that particularly own their own masters. And another level of this game is the hit clause. When his master was wooing the Nereid Amphitrite and she fled, Delphin was sent to find the nymph and persuade her to agree to the marriage. For his service, Poseidon placed the dolphin amongst the stars as the constellation Delphinus. So Poseidon, Delphinus is all connected to some type of form of spy work, some type of intel to figure out how this earth really works. And when you figure out how this earth really works, you alert archons. And when you alert the archons, you don't really, if somebody want to get you, they going to get you. But of course, another level of that is that energy cannot be killed. Energy can't be destroyed. It can only change forms. So the energy is liver and more intense now, because the flesh of the money, of the diamonds, you're talking about a highly advanced mound builder, leader, king energy that's tuned in and tapped into Delphin, Poseidon, and the archetype of it and the essence of it. He was a walking embodiment of a mound builder, right? I have to find him. It was this god with like gold teeth. And I meant to do research on it, but it just now hit me. I have to do more research on it. Yeah, I'm gonna do more research on that. So, let's keep going. Let's deal with Atlas. His fascination with people, life, and the cosmos is not a new fascination. It is a very ancient fascination that's tied into this race of people for which are connected to the cosmos. Y'all will call them black. I'm gonna call us Atlanteans because that's what we are. The game is to call us black, call us from Africa, to say, we were shipped here on boats. Because when you start to get into the mound builder history of places of people from St. Louis, Memphis, Detroit, New Orleans, right? Cash Money Millionaires and No Limit and things of that nature, Nelly and things of that nature, just Detroit as a whole energy. You can understand the primordial nature, but the problem is that people take this energy and they just buy shit with it. That's the problem. They don't connect the inner with the outer. It's just all outer. Atlas was the primordial titan who supported the heavens. So Atlas would be Ophiuchus, Imhotep, things that we were talking about yesterday, Asclepius, the natural healing ability that exists within us, the king of the world, which what holds the world up is our natural ability to heal ourselves. Because even being attacked, even having all of these energy thrown at us, we still here having these conversations, and some of us aren't. That's how you know it's powerful. And a negative force. It's a negative force being thrown against us, but yet we still stand because we are tuned in and tapped into this primordial race of people. The only thing is, when we step on the first step, which would be wealth, you would be a target. So you see it in people like R. Kelly, Bill Cosby, and I'm not saying that these is good people, nor am I saying that they deserve negative treatment, because I don't never know full story, nor do I research in it, because at the same time, it's heavy campaigns to tear people down, and I know that it's way worse people that we not even talking about. What they call it is scapegoats and things of that nature. So the 12 Olympians led by Zeus overthrew the Titans in the Titanomachy, the War of the Titans. The Titans were then imprisoned in Tartarus. So the Titans is your Atlantean energy, which is simply a non-physical sense. So when they talk about Atlantes, they say at first we were energy and we existed without bodies. And then we said, you know what, it'd be cool if we brought our essence into the body. That way we could have sex, we could build buildings, we can play in the water, but we could still be our spiritual self in tune to the knowledge of all, the knowledge of one. The problem is, once our consciousness and our essence got into those bodies, what had happened was we forgot. So the Titans being imprisoned in Tartarus in the deepest part of the underworld is the facts of our spiritual nature being our unconscious and subconscious mind. Unconscious meaning that we're not conscious to it. Subconscious meaning that it is under our conscious mind. The Titans were then imprisoned in Tartarus, the deepest part of the underworld, with a few exceptions. Ashe for those few exceptions. Those who didn't fight with Kronos, those who didn't fight with time, right? Because at a certain point, when you understand it, you can't really fight it because you have these heavy allergic triggered reactions to the flesh, right? I talk all of this righteous shit, but I don't know how I'm going to act if you start twerking in front of me and shit like that. I might my snake might just come out, and I'm just like, I didn't even know this was here. Atlas was a part of the second generation of Titans. The children of Titan were also known as Titans, right? So no matter how imprisoned we are into Tartarus, no matter how many bubble eye Benzes on 20-inch rims as we get, that will never be the truth. The truth is to go deep into the subconscious mind, right? And see what it is to see, right? And it's not going to be our external energy. It's going to be something much more powerful. So let's talk about this in a deeper aspect to why this is related to astrology. Political leaders can be seen as representatives of these heavenly rulers. The interest in the heavens led to the rise of astrology and astronomy. Did y'all see that though? Political leaders came to be seen as representatives of these heavenly rulers. So when you see a person and you can understand a person and you can feel a person's energy, it's best to start studying them from a cosmological archetypal level, because it might just save their ass. Because 10 times out of 10, you might just think that your name is Susie Sue from up the block. Whole time you could be the embodiment of the planet Venus walking. You could be the embodiment of the planet Neptune. You could be the embodiment of constellations and stars that astronomers have never even seen, because you from distant aspects of the galaxy. This is why it's so important, not just for our generation, but for ancient generations to understand this. Because the more that you understand astrology, the more that you understand astronomy, the more you understand yourself and where you are positioned in the world today. Okay? Because if we was in Australia, we'd be having a whole different language, understanding, so forth and so on. But we not in Australia right now. We in America talking that one talk. Okay? Talking that one talk. Like their predecessors, the first generation Titans and some of the second generation were associated with the heavenly bodies and celestial phenomena. So we came down here as heavenly bodies on earth, and we seen these humans, which were animals, in their mindset. Because when you look at a human being that's not in tune to his knowledge of self, they'll pull up to a McDonald's, get a double cheeseburger with extra cheese and bacon, and smash that bitch and drink it down with a Sprite. When you do the studies on what's in that bacon and hamburger and cheese and Sprite, there's no way you gonna eat that shit. But when you ain't tuned in and tapped into your soul, you don't even have a buffer. You just doing shit out here in these streets. But when you get a sense of knowledge of self, you start to move and act differently. And you might not have strength to deal with your motherfucking blocks and barriers at this point, but your soul do. So give yourself some fucking credit and know yourself. Quite simply. Greek mythology remains an important influence on the culture, arts, literature, Western civilization, which is why we're talking about it today. Though an ancient Greek religion based upon the tales have long since faded into obscurity, Greek myths remain the archetypical sources for much of Western fiction, poetry, film, and visual art. So when you see a rap star who's not signed to a record label that's successful, Houston, we have a problem. This was not his first attempt on his life. However, if this man knew who he was cosmologically, he would have moved different. However, he think that he just a man in Memphis, from South Memphis. This is mama and his daddy, and this is his family. All of these things are true, but there's a deeper level for which we must go to get the true truth. And this true truth is found in healing and intuition. For which, if you are in tune with your healing and intuition, you will leave how you want to leave. You ain't going to leave, lacking, as the young people like to say. Greek mythology has played a pivotal role in development in modern studies, mythology, psychology, and philology, and exercises a role in business and marketing as well. It don't stop. Atlas is among the figures who have lent their names to a wide variety of products. So you got Atlas Truck Service, Atlas Maps, and Atlas everything, but Atlas, which would be our ability to understand the Atlantean disclosure, where these planets from constellations from all over the universe transcended on Earth and created a world for which they could live and congregate like a home base for celestials, where we come down, have a good time, create positive energies, love it up, and all of these things that we can't do holding down the universe. So for a large percentage of the time when we were down here, it was wonderful. And this is what we call the mound builder cultures of America. This is what we call Atlantis. Okay? Of course, me just saying that make me sound crazy. So let's just hop, skip, and jump and flip to Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce is a spiritualist who did readings, read astrology, did hypnosis, and helped people every day get in contact with themselves. He created a foundation called the ARE, which is still in business today. It's located in Virginia Beach. So if you are in the Virginia Beach area, suggest you pull up and tap in and say hello, say Hood Mystic sent you. He's really into this stuff. He's probably the only person that I know that's into it, and they'll probably welcome you in with open arms. This is just what I'm envisioning if you pull it up to the ARE, but I digress. Cayce indicated that the largest migration from Atlantis occurred just before 10,000 BC. The majority of these Atlantean survivors went to the northeastern coastal areas of North America and Canada and became the Iroquois. It should be recalled that Cayce also stated that not all Iroquois were Atlantean. The Atlanteans migrating to the Americas merged with the people already present in America by that time. The Atlanteans became the leaders of the tribes, okay? The Atlanteans became the leaders of the tribes. So look at the people in your area. I'm sure in every black neighborhood, there are leaders, and then there are followers. When you tap into your leadership, you start to do the shit that your soul tell you to do, and you listen, and you act. And to the people on the outside looking in, you bold. But you're not really bold, you just tuned in and tapped in. And Cayce's story makes it clear that the Atlanteans had serious disputes among themselves that were reflected in ongoing violent conflict. And I promise you that the Sons of Belial and the Law of the One groups are at war to this day. It's an energy that exists within all of us that exists to this day. And the reason that exists, because if we're in the abyss of materialism and none of us have understanding of this spiritual understanding of our soul, of Atlantis, we just believe in lies on top of lies, that we can't even have sit downs and talk downs about the root of our existence. Because this whole shit was, a lot of shit that happened in past lives in Atlantis came about of like sit down meetings. When people stopped sitting down and having meetings, they started beefing. And trust me, the reason that Europeans was able to come here and take over like they did is because Atlanteans can't get along. Now I tell you, imagine now, can black people get along today? Do we really get along for real? Or is it petty little beefs and petty little jealousies and things of that nature that exist between us? But yet and still, we can sit here all day and talk about how the white man is holding us down. We can sit here all day and talk about it, but at the same time, we'll be petty and jealous towards each other, but we're not going to talk about that though, right? Except when it get violent, except when one of us die. But the whole time, niggas been beefing and talking shit, right? It wasn't like we was organizing and coming together and developing peace within us, because at the same time, people was talking about death and murder and killing black men on their raps. They wasn't talking about this understanding. So essentially, this reflection is always going to end up violently. And if you look at these rappers over these past couple of years, this is a thing now. Like I said in my live on IG, 20 years from now, you'd be rare to find people listening to hip hop. Because we'll start to understand, like, oh, this music is killing people. These young kids is hypnotized by this shit. The combination of the video games and the music, they don't have no respect for life. Hey, Spotify, Apple Music, y'all can't listen to hip hop no more. It's not even going to be making no money in a couple of years because people going to be hip to it. We reversing this hypnosis. Even the small group of people that's listening to this live, if you can understand what I'm saying, you are doing your job. And as you do your job, you'll watch this earth change, because at the non-physical level is where we hold the most power. This is not a money game. This is confirmed by the Iroquois' ancient history that tells of constant battles resulting in distant displacements of entire tribes to ensure their survival. Perhaps the most astonishing confirmation of Casey's story of ancient America is the presence of haplogroup X. What is known as the X haplogroup first showed up in America perhaps 34,000 years ago, but its main entry occurred in 10,000 BC, matching Mr. Casey's time frame for the Atlantean migrations. The X group also appears to have shown up in ancient Iberia and the Bass about the same time, as well as the Gobi. These dates match Casey's story of the final two destructions of Atlantis, resulting in migration to these areas. So, in reference to Memphis, which is a major mound building site and a major Atlantean outpost, and some of the black people from North Memphis and South Memphis to this day have been living there for thousands of years. It's only the illusion that they tell you that they shipped you from Africa, when probably they just shipped you from Detroit. How you gonna know as a little kid that you traveling from Africa to a different country? What's the difference from you getting on a boat when you're a little kid and traveling from Africa to America, or from Detroit to goddamn South Carolina along the Mississippi River? As a kid, you would just gonna believe everything that people tell you. You ain't gonna know no difference. But since we're here, let's look this up before we examine this little lie. And you can tell anybody, you can get any Harvard professor and tell me that I'm telling a lie to y'all today. So what we going to do? Reverse Underground Railroad. I don't know if y'all heard of this. I'm going to tell y'all if y'all didn't. The Reverse Underground Railroad is the name given sardonically to the pre-American Civil War practice of kidnapping in free states, not only fugitive slaves, but free blacks as well, transporting them to the slave states and selling them as slaves, or occasionally getting a reward for return of a fugitive, but transporting them to slave states and selling them as slaves. Those who used the term were pro-slavery and angry at an underground railroad, helping slaves escape. Also, the so-called Underground Railroad had incidents, but not a network, and its activities did not always take place in secret. Rescues of blacks being kidnapped were unusual. Let's read that again. Rescues of blacks being kidnapped were unusual. The three types of kidnapping methods were employed: physical abduction, entanglement. That ain't funny. We being serious. Kidnapping through trickery of free blacks, and apprehension of fugitives. They keep throwing in this apprehension of fugitives, but I swear that's irrelevant to the fact. The Reverse Railroad operated for 85 years. I haven't even been alive for 85 years, but just imagine every day. If you've been alive for as long as me, I've been alive for 37 years. So for 37 years, every single day, they just carrying black people from Detroit to New Orleans, from New Orleans to South Carolina, from South Carolina to Memphis, and just going back and forth. This is the Underground Railroad, okay? This is you getting sent from Africa, okay? Let's even go further. Since we here, King Philip's War, slaves. They don't ever talk about this, and I'm just trying to figure out. why they don't talk about this. I ain't a crazy person. While the natives had been forced into slavery and servitude as early as 1636, it was not until King Philip's War that natives were enslaved in large numbers. They say natives were enslaved, not Africans were enslaved. When you look at this country, you got millions of people that you could specifically intentionally enslave because you got the guns. Tell me the sense, okay? Tell me the sense, black people, of you going all the way to Africa on a wooden ship and getting like that don't even make sense if slavery is the point. But y'all done never heard about this though. Y'all heard about the slaves and the transatlantic slave trade and all that. But what about who was the natives that was forced into slavery? What happened in King Philip's War where the natives were enslaved in large numbers? From 1675 to 1676, the war pated Native American leader King Philip, also known as Metacom. Y'all talk about a metaverse, meta.com. What about the original Metacom, King Philip, right? During the war, the England colonies routinely, not every once in a while, routinely shipped Native Americans as slaves to Barbados, Bermuda, Jamaica, and Azores, Spain, and Tangier. You talk to them people, they say they got sent here from Africa. You ain't never going to hear them say, I got sent from America down here. My ancestors is American Atlanteans, Iroquois Indians, and things of that nature. No. Because motherfuckers is lying and we calling it truth. That's the issue. But let's talk about this. I seen this with my own eyes. And when I seen this with my own eyes, I said, man, they just lay it out right there. The first three words, family, the first Africans in Virginia, the first documented Africans. They tell you right there. To document somebody, because I documented an African in Virginia, does not make it the first African in Virginia. Do y'all understand that? Give me a thumbs up if y'all understand what I'm saying. If you can document in Africa, what about the Africans that wasn't documented? And because they weren't documented, does that mean that they didn't exist? And I thought Africa meant the whole world. It just meant the land. So the first documented people of the land in Virginia, right? By on the White Lion. Oh, Lord Jesus. Thank you. Jesus came and spoke to us right now. He came and talked. He came through and said, here you go. Y'all see this? You can't tell me that Jesus ain't real. White Lion. What? Oh. Oh, you can't make it up. An English privateer based in the Netherlands, colonial officials traded food for these 20-odd Africans who've been captured from a Portuguese slave ship. Among present-day Hampton's earliest African residents were Anthony and Isabella. Their son, William, was the first child of African ancestry known to have been born in Virginia. Known to have been, that's a passive sentence. I write every day, and every day when you say shit like this, who knows it? When you say known to have been, you got to clarify that, right? To be a direct sentence. So if you say their son William was the first child of African ancestry that the world known to have been born in Virginia, then okay. But if you don't put nothing in front of that known, that's a passive sentence, and that just, now I gotta be imaginative into who possibly knows it. Many of the earliest Africans were held as slaves, but some individuals became free. Man, this shit just pisses me off, man. Cause it don't make no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. So let's continue. Everyone is a healer as the sun enters a crab and destroys